This week on Now That's It,
I started very early. I started very young.
Andrew Hollister, founder of SimpleTech Innovations, takes us from his humble beginnings.
My uncle growing up, he had an IT job. He would just drive to the office, pick up all the computers, bring them back home, fix them there.
To his first job in IT, and how that led to starting his own company as a teenager.
I went downtown, I filed my DBA paperwork, spent, I think it was $34 to get a SimpleTech Innovations DBA filed with the county, and I met with the customer, and that was the first SimpleTech customer.
The bumps along the way.
I don't think I was even 20 yet when I had the first customer carry a balance and not pay me.
And how a unique approach to culture has SimpleTech thinking big about the future.
Anybody else who's listening to this and you're dealing with burnout, that was like huge for us, figuring that out.
Welcome to Now That's It, Stories of MSP Success, where we dive into the journeys of some of the trailblazers in our industry to find out how they used their passion for technology to help turn managed services into the thriving sector it is today.
Andrew Hollister, thank you for joining us today. You're the founder and president of SimpleTech Innovations, an IT service provider based in Rochester, New York. That's a beautiful town, by the way.
I love Rochester.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. So you and I got to spend some time together over the last couple of months, pretty recently. You've been to a couple of our business transformation programs that we host for our partners, and so it was great having you there. But the coolest thing was you flew to Prague to come to the Enable and Empower conference. And so you and I got to hang out. And of course, we talked work, life, all that sort of stuff. But I loved you hearing your story about you as a young kid and obviously you creating this MSP that you have here. And so thank you for being here. I can't wait for you to tell some of this story to the group here.
Yeah. No, thanks so much for having me. And for those of you who might not know where Rochester is, we're in what we would call upstate New York, just south of Lake Ontario, not too far away from Niagara Falls. And we've got a beautiful city. And everybody used to say we have bad weather, but now our weather's been, the last few years has been really good, surprisingly. Yeah. So knock on wood, now we're going to get a blizzard.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Yeah. It's one of the best places to live for families in the United States. I read.
It is.
Cost of living. You have trees, which is beautiful.
We have trees. Yeah. Imagine that. Trees.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks so much. Why don't we get right into it? So the young Andrew Hollister, when you were a kid, you grew up just like all these other kids, right? These kids these days, they're like born with a PC in their hand and, gaming and all that sort of stuff. You were just like that, right?
No, not a chance. Yeah. I want to say it was the first piece of technology I probably had access to. Maybe like a Sega Genesis.
Okay.
Or like the Game Boy, the version that came out right before the color, like the big square gray block.
Okay.
That might have been the first technology I had access to. So
nice.
No smartphones yet. Smartphones came later. My first computer was a Windows 3.1 machine. So
why was that? What was there? You told me the story.
Yeah. So we grew up in what's the best way to put it? Less fortunate than most around us, I guess, is what I'll say. So anything we had was really secondhand. So first computer was donated, I think, by like a family member whose company had retired it like 4 times, something like that. And then the second computer we got this really cool Windows 98 machine. It came in a beige box. I think it was an E-Machines from way back in the day there.
Oh, yeah.
Same deal. I think a family member gave it to us. And ironically, I wasn't really allowed to use the computer for various reasons. In my upbringing, they thought computers were bad. You shouldn't have computers, whether it was a religious reason or other reasons. And so naturally, when you tell a child they can't have something or use something, that is the thing that they want to do the most. That is the thing they're drawn to. And, I think you could do that with anything. Like, I'm sure you could make a study. Just choose something, tell a child they can't have it. That's the one thing they want. And so that's kind of like how it happened for me. But then I just was naturally so interested in them. My uncle growing up, he had an IT job. He worked for an ISP. He had a strange remote to work job, which was remote work didn't really exist then. So he would just drive to the office, pick up all the computers, bring them back home, fix them there. And they didn't care. As long as at the end of the week he had 40 hours clocked, he could do whatever he wanted from home. So I spent a lot of time just kind of absorbing that knowledge and becoming more interested. And I remember when he was showing me email. He was just showing me dial-up internet and email. And wrapping my head around the concept of that was just wild. I'm like, wait, the computer needs to be like doing the same noise with the phone to get this message like that we're sending, and it was just so intriguing to me. I absolutely loved it.
Wow, that's great. So it's neat to hear other people's upbringing and how it drastically differed from mine. And you and I are about the same age. The difference was that my dad was the math teacher in the high school. And so he was naturally the guy that was like teaching early computers, right? And so I remember when the internet was the, dial up, you put the phone on the modem and you had a bulletin board and you were literally, there was no pictures, right? You were literally messaging people. And so you got exposed to that late, but you didn't let that stop you. So you get into high school, and I think you had told me that's when you really started your first business, right?
Yeah. So before I started the business, once again, so hungry for this, I landed my first job at RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology, and got a chance to manage computers there. I really wasn't supposed to. It was supposed to be more of like a shadowing type of position, and we could spend a whole day talking about the experience there. But I got the exposure to managing 20,000 machines on the network. Really just everything from their desktop support service to their residential side, to their networking team, to their what they called DSS at the time, which was their distributed support for all the labs on campus. I got a lot of that experience under my belt. And then I also worked for a local nonprofit, Boys and Girls Club of America, managing a few of their networks. And then, one day I was just wrapping up high school, getting ready, started to apply, to go to school at RIT, get into college. And somebody walks through the door at one of my jobs and says, "Hey, we're looking for somebody to manage this network for a medical office. They've got 2 locations. They need to connect them. It's got to be HIPAA compliant, all of this. We tried to find a solution. It's just too expensive for the small office. Is this something that you think you could do?" I was like, yeah, absolutely. And that became, so I went downtown, I filed my DBA paperwork, spent, I think it was $34 to get a SimpleTech Innovations DBA filed with the county, and met with the customer, and that was the first SimpleTech customer.
Wow, that's fantastic. So you instead of going again back to my background. My background, it was, okay, you're going to finish high school, you're going to go to college, and then you're going to figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life. That was not the Andrew Hollister way, was it? I mean, you had you saw an opportunity right there, and you jumped at it.
I went for it. Yeah, I did. And it's interesting because I did become a student at RIT as well. And but that didn't last nearly as long. Because when you go to school and you have that much industry experience, it's really hard to sit in a classroom and, go through the basic courses and, you're like, I want to deploy a domain controller. I don't want to learn what the start menu is.
Right.
And so the next opportunity that really presented to myself was maybe about a year and a half later, when I was sitting down with my academic advisor and I said, I'm spending a lot of money going to school. I was paying for school myself. So I was the one signing the loans, and I was the one taking all that debt on and counting those dollars. And I was living by myself too. And I said, I need to take a break from school to really evaluate what's going on. And they said, okay, I signed all the paperwork. The next day I go back to clock in, and the chrono system won't punch me in. And I'm like, wait, what's going on? And the manager comes out, oh, well, technically, even though you worked here before you became a student, when you became a student, we converted your employment to student employment. And since you took a leave of absence, you can't work here anymore. And so at that moment, I was like, okay, I mean, as any student was, severely underpaid, right? It doesn't change anywhere in any time in history. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to be full-time for myself. And so at that point, I went home and made the company my full-time job.
So it sounds to me like, I mean, you had a bunch of challenge thrown at you at a very young age. And you were trying your best to just sort of go through the motions and, I'll keep going to school. I'll keep working. But you were presented with this, essentially it was a choice, but not much of a choice. I mean, you pretty much had to make that decision. But let me ask you, like, what was it like getting into business at such a young age? I mean, my goodness, you are like, this is your life now, and you're a teenager still.
Yeah, so I'll be honest. In the beginning, it was awesome, right? Because I only had like 4 clients, maybe. So I could wake up at 11 in the morning, and that could be the first customer support call coming in, But then as you grow, you really, I went through some tremendous challenges, and it didn't take very long. I mean, I don't think I wasn't even 20 yet, I don't think, or I was right about 20 when I had the first customer carry a balance and not pay me.
Wow.
And, we're talking about nearly $10,000 of equipment that I had purchased on their behalf, and then they just did not pay. Stop or return, like, my calls, like everything. And so, of course, like, I started missing car payments. I couldn't pay my RG&E bill. Oh, well, RG&E, that's what we call it here in Rochester. My utility bill, gas, electric. It was terrifying. And I was just like trying as hard as I could to like dig myself out of that situation. So of course, what I do, I racked up credit card debt. So I had friends, they were racking up student loans. I was racking up credit card debt, and the student loan interest is a little more friendly, but It locks you in for a lot longer. So I went through some immense challenges, which really changed my business practice very quickly. But I was able to rebound. It took a long time to get out of that, but I reaped a lot of benefits too. Having that responsibility so early in life, really let me push ahead. I bought my first house when I was 21 years old, for example, and that has led to kind of a different shoot off entirely, where I've got a real estate portfolio now as well. So there were times it was absolutely terrifying.
I bet.
And there still is, there always will be. Stepping into new stuff, jumping into some of the bleeding edge technology, figuring out where you're going to invest your time, your energy, and your funds in this space every day, continues to throw get that little twinge of adrenaline and excitement, but also a little bit of terror along the way.
I bet. I mean, that had to mature you very quickly as a teenager when you're introduced with that type of adversity. And I'm glad to hear that obviously you were able to rebound from that. But why don't you talk a little bit about that? Like, obviously these are probably relationships, these first customers that you had. I think you said you had 4. These first customers that you had, I mean, these are like known entities, right? I mean, friends, if you will, if you can use that term. And so to have one of them not pay their bill and know that like you're a small business, it's really, really important. I mean, what was that like for you and obviously that relationship going forward?
Yeah, so I learned just it doesn't matter who you are, people aren't necessarily going to pay their bills, right? I mean, and that's just it. And I would even venture to say, if you were to survey people and say, who's more likely to pay you back, a stranger or a friend? A friend sometimes you'll understand. I'll get you next time, buddy. So sometimes strangers do pay better. But what I learned there is, doesn't matter where somebody comes from. You got to have good agreements in place. I mean, one thing that we do that I think is becoming more common, that has resulted from this and many other slow-paying customers over the years, is that sometimes people don't value the IT services that you're providing. It's in the background. If you're doing it right, if you're doing it how we're doing it, customers don't normally see us because things don't go wrong. And I've had to explain to people, we don't sell break fix. We don't sell IT services. What we sell you is uptime. And so if you're having downtime, well, that's not the solution I'm trying to provide you. I don't want to show up and fix your stuff. I want you to think, wow, it's still working. And when you talk to your friends in the other spaces and they go, yeah, the IT's here again fixing something, I want the response to be like, really? We never see our IT guys. It's always working, So, with that being in mind, a lot of times people, if you do it that way, they think, well, I'm not calling this guy. What am I going to pay him for? He's not showing up. Things work just fine without this guy. Yeah, because we made it that way, Whereas if your water bill doesn't get paid, or your utility bill doesn't get paid, or your internet bill doesn't get paid, it gets turned off, and it becomes really, really important. It becomes at the top of your list. I don't have lights. I need this. So we made changes like we just auto debit our clients, period. No exceptions. We don't do, I know some MSPs that kind of get around it, they charge for a month in advance. We don't do that because we do bill some usage to our clients. But we auto debit their entire balance the following month. And we do it straight bank routing numbers, ACH collection through our bank. And that fixes 98% of that.
Awesome. I love that we sell uptime. That's maybe one of the best ways that I've heard MSPs describe their managed service practice. As you know, I spent many a year at a managed service provider, and I remember distinctly those conversations of, we never called you this month. Why should we have to pay you? That's why you should have to pay us, right? And that was such a challenge. And matter of fact, I don't want to say it's a good problem to have, but you are doing something really well if you are having partners say, I barely noticed you this month. And then you say, is everything working all right? Did you have any issues? Was anybody complaining? And the answer is no. And it's like, well, I guess it was working, right? I guess you did really help us. So that's great, Andrew. All right. So you have these 4 customers that, again, you're able to sort of still live the life and, get up late, whatever you need to do. But as you grew those customers, how long did it take you to grow those 4 customers into something a bit more substantial? Not till you hired somebody, but you're still going, wow, I'm really working my butt off.
Yeah, I want to say it was about a year till I opened a physical office location, hired my first employee, went through a few of them for sure. We did not, it goes back to that same thing, you don't want, not that you shouldn't hire friends, right? But hire friends, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You find out great friends are not good employees. And vice versa. There was so much I had to learn about hiring. And that's one of the things that I think we actually have down pretty good. Our hiring process is incredible. We bring amazing people in. We understand our company culture. We know what it is. So when we bring people in, we know what we're looking for. And, but yeah, in the beginning, and I think any business owner, whether an MSP or not, will tell you that, they thought their problems were bad until they hired their first employee, and then they realized, wait, now I have to manage people. And sometimes you don't have the skill set to manage people. You can be incredible at your trade or your craft. But when it comes to managing people, that's just a totally different skill set.
Was it the management that was difficult, or were you just bringing the wrong people in? Were you looking for the wrong thing?
I would say both, and I would say, so we talked about, I started very early. I started very young. That gave me a handicap that I kind of the way I got over the handicap was just being very entrepreneurial in the sense that I was just very driven. I had a lot of drive. I'd find a way to make it work. I had zero business experience whatsoever. I never even worked for an MSP. I started an MSP before people were really calling them MSPs. Everybody was, for the most part, break fix. So I didn't have the skill set to identify the right people, for sure. I had very little skill set in management. So it was a combination of both. Like, some of it was finding the right people. Others of it was understanding management, how to manage expectations, and, sometimes just holding firm on certain things that just weren't acceptable.
Yeah, that's good. So what was the business like early on, Andrew? Like, when you're trying to hire, you're trying to find those first couple employees, and you're cycling through employees, and you're adding new customers. I mean, I think we called it a grind when we were talking earlier. What was that like?
So in terms of the team, for the most part, positive, right? Because also, once again, starting the business so young, most of the people you're hiring are also your age. So it's like, have a great time at work, go out and, have a good time after work. And everybody we kind of just built this family, this camaraderie, this whole, make work not like, work needs to be professional, work needs to be taken seriously, but also have people around you that you enjoy being around, and that after work, you don't mind still seeing those people. Like, go out, I'd say have a beer. I wasn't old enough to have a beer yet, but, go out wherever, and we
have a Faygo.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and we did fun stuff too, right? Like, we did a customer appreciation day. We ordered like 300 donuts and had them at the office. Ordered in rental slushy machines, and then here's the thing: not enough people came, so everybody just sat there and ate donuts and drank slushy all day.
Put on 10 pounds.
Yeah.
You're a big culture guy, right? I mean, we talked a lot about that, and I got to know you. I think back in Austin was the first time we met, and you just preach culture over and over. Why is that so important? I mean, I can tell it's a big deal, but why is that so important?
It is. So I think culture is so important for so many reasons. Culture, I think, will make or break a company unless you have something else that's so much better that your culture doesn't matter. So we're a small business. We can't compete with the salaries of some of the larger companies. We just don't have big enough accounts, and we're still figuring that stuff out, right? So if somebody from California that has a crazy different market wants to remote hire people from Rochester, which Rochester salary market is just nowhere near as high as that, they can do that. They can take an employee away right away. But if you have a culture there where people want to come to work, they love their team, they love their customers, they feel like they're with family, and in a good way, because there's plenty of people that they can't stand their family. And you can still have disagreements, and you can still have different perspectives, and you can be open about it, and you can talk, and you can work with these people. And then you clock out and you feel good about the fact that you went to work. And when Monday morning rolls around and you go, I can't wait to get back into work, then some of the other stuff that small businesses struggle with, that goes away. And then on top of that, if you have that positive culture, the way those people treat your customers is just so much better. Like, imagine you go to work and you're like, I love this place, and somebody calls and they're having the worst time of their day, because that's what we deal with as MSPs, right? When somebody's calling you, they're not typically calling you to say, hey, I had the best day ever and just wanted to let you know. Usually they're calling you because like, I have this emergency. It's super, super important. I need this taken care of like yesterday. Oh my God, the sky is falling. Please help me. And if you have somebody on the other end of the phone who's like, I can't stand this place. What is it? It's oh crap. It's only Tuesday? I thought for sure it was Thursday. Oh man, it's 10 o'clock. We're not even anywhere near 5. How's that person going to react to that customer who and the customer may be kind of like, I don't want to say mistreating the employee, but the customer may come off really strong on the get-go because they're having a bad day, right? And if your employee feels that way, how is their response got to be? Versus same scenario, but the employee's like, wow, I just love being here. I just had an amazing meeting with my team. I'm so excited about this new software we're going to roll out. Customer calls in with a problem. You're answering with a smile and you're like, yeah, I'm going to knock this out of the park. I'm going to kill this. And I know that this customer, because I've worked with them for a few times, I know that they sometimes have a problem with this other thing that maybe it's user error, but, you know, it still falls under what we're going to help them with. Before we get off the phone, I'm going to double check and be like, hey, how's that issue going? Is this working out for you? Is that how-to guide I printed out and left on your desk on how to log into XYZ app? Is that working good for you? Okay, awesome. Yeah, those are just two wildly different experiences. And we want the second one. We want the second one every day.
That's great. So two quick follow-ups to that. I commiserate with you on the no one calls to just say hello. Except when I used to run a services team back in the day, I used to keep an eye on the call logs and how long these calls are taking, how long my techs are on the calls. And I looked down and I saw one of my techs that was just, he was really good about like just getting through tickets. Like that was his number one quality. And I could tell he was having a rough morning, had a couple of bad calls and things like that. And then all of a sudden he's on this call for like 25 minutes. And I'm like, Kyle, that's, Kyle for this purposes of the story. Kyle, like, what's going on, man? You're on the phone. Is something bad? And he goes, hey, I gotta let you know, this customer called me just to say hello and said that they really just wanted to say hello. And they appreciate everything that I do. And it was the nicest thing. And I was having such a bad day that I just needed to talk to him for like 25 minutes to get my confidence all built up. And then I will rally. So that's great. Every once in a while in a blue moon, it happens. So that's great. It happens. It does. That's great. And then the other one too, around culture, absolutely. You're spending the majority of your life with these people that are strangers at some point in time. And now, you're sitting next to them, you're eating lunch with them. You're going to picnics and stuff like that, hopefully. But the other part that I think is really, really important around culture and why people come in and really enjoy coming in, and because I remember this with myself, is when you are valued as an employee, when you feel like you are making a difference, that is a huge piece to culture. And I love trying to inspire technicians to make sure that they understand how important their role is, even if it's just a small role. And I could tell from some of the folks, I know Gabe, like I could tell that they feel like they are valued in their roles there. So I love that. I love what you're doing there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. At the end of the day, there's really nobody more important than your employees. Like at the end of the day, that's true, because I tell you what, customers, they can come and go. Right. And we actually have an incredible customer retention rate too. Like that's a whole other topic. But I think it's because of the culture, and the employees know from day one, part of the training is, listen, if you're having a bad time, let me know. If you're having a difficult customer, let me know. We've let customers go before over just mistreating our employees. And it's not just like, customer, you're bad, bye, goodbye. But it becomes a conversation like, hey, when this employee from your organization calls my team, they're mistreating them. And, we are a service provider, but we still expect respect, being given to our team. And I know that you might be frustrated or you might have somebody who's going through a hard thing. We're not going to take it personally, but I do need you to act professionally with my team. And if it gets abused, it's just quick call. Hey, I can tell this isn't working out. You choose the next provider you want to go to. I will make it as easy as possible. All of your passwords, your configuration, everything, I'll slide over. This will be the easiest transition you ever went through in your life. Yeah. And the team knows that. The team knows and understands because they've seen it happen. They've seen me say, the money that the customer is going to bring in is not worth what you're going to spend as an organization replacing good team members. It's just not. And that was before COVID happened. Now that COVID happened, it's hard to find people. So if you don't treat them right, if they don't understand that they're valued personally, it's easy for them to go.
That's great. So powerful for you to establish that in your MSP early on. As an employee, they know very quickly that it's not all about the money, right? Which obviously you're running a business, and so you are there to make money. But for you to be able to walk away from some revenue that you would classify as bad revenue because of the way that the partner or the customers are mistreating your employees, I think that's really powerful. And I'm sure it's not like you said, oh, well, they were having a bad day and they're upset. Like it's a consistent thing that's happening.
Exactly.
And you've had conversations and you've given them the warning and then said, look, it's just not working out, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And,
Awesome.
a lot of things can be solved with a conversation, but when it becomes the same conversation over and over again, it's just like an employee, it becomes the same deal. So,
let's talk about SimpleTech as you guys really started to sort of explode with your growth, right? So you started to hire some really good technicians, some really good staff. You sort of went from, we weren't hiring the right people, we weren't managing them the right way, to pretty much a transformation. You were hiring the right people, and you were able to keep them there. What was that thing that got you over the hump? How did you transform?
So I think the first step is, we identified that we had company culture. It all really does kind of come back to the culture, because you start asking yourself as an employer, a small employer who's only got a handful of people on the team, well, I want another Gabe, for example. Like, you identify somebody on your team who's working right, and you're like, okay, this team member is working out great. They're doing all the right things. What makes this person, or what makes this team member the ideal employee? And then you start evaluating things, and you go, well, we're not necessarily the same type of employer as everybody else. So what makes us as an employer fit that type of person? And then as we started going into it, we're like, it's culture. That's what it is. And so we decided we'd start investing time into understanding what company culture was, and I kind of laugh because right now, it's almost like it's a hot topic. It's almost a buzzword, company culture. I mean, this is probably almost 8 years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. People weren't really concerned with that. And so we really kind of like dove in. I mean, we did stuff. We hired a firm to do personality testing and all sorts of things so we could start getting data. And then just digging through, doing some research, we found this company who had put a tremendous amount of emphasis on company culture, and found their slide deck. And it was, I think, over 100 slides long. I can't remember. It was like 98 or maybe even like 180 something. I don't know. It was huge. And it spelled out everything they were looking for. And this company, by the way, they're still around. Some people, maybe they've heard of them, maybe not. I don't know. They're like Netflix,
Right.
And, if you look at what Netflix did, I mean, they had some incredible things. And I don't know if the culture is the same there. I would guess it is. They were renting out DVDs, right? And they have stepped into the streaming subscription world. And they made it. If you look at somebody like Blockbuster, for example, they didn't make it. They were around a lot longer than Netflix was. There are many other companies, but they not only adapted and moved as technology went, they created strong culture. And one of the things I thought was so interesting about their emphasis on culture was that they didn't want people in their organization that didn't match their culture. And that was one of the first things, like, we realized, we're like, yeah, when we bring in somebody who doesn't match our culture, things clash. Like, people aren't, it's not that they're not working together, but they're not working efficiently. You get kind of like one person feeling kind of bad, somebody else isn't pulling their weight, one person's on time, the other person isn't, and you start to realize that, okay, so what makes everybody work well together is not actually personality types. Like, and I know there's people out there that'll say, you need this personality type and you match it with this. And I'm sure there's a ton of science that says that's true. For us, it's much simpler than that. We're not doing that. We don't do any personality testing during our interviews. We do kind of like culture testing.
Both.
And maybe somebody could argue it's the same thing. I don't know. But for example, we're a very laid back company. We do not micromanage our team. In fact, the way we do things is most of the employees are pretty autonomous. They do what they want to do. Part of that is, I believe that if you love what you do, you will do it the best that you could. Otherwise, you need some other motivator, whether that's, financial stability, some cool prize, notoriety, name recognition. There's so many things that motivate people. But if you love what you do, if you're passionate about it, you're already going to do your best. And then all those other things you'll still get. But those are just kind of like little cherries on top. That's not the driving force. So we realized, one of the first things we realized as we started looking at our successful hires, we realized that, and everybody knows this. When I say this, everybody's going to be like, yeah, of course, we all know this. There's a lot of burnout in our field, right?
Yeah,
like everybody knows there's a lot of burnout here. It's crazy to me too. If you look at like fast food workers and restaurant workers, those people get treated so badly. They really do. Yet our industry has a higher burnout rate than theirs does. Just think about that for a moment. So we started looking at that and we said, well, what's differentiating people? And we realized that the staff that were most successful, they had passions outside of work that had nothing to do with technology. Like Gabe, we brought up Gabe. Gabe's a rock climber. He loves rock climbing. He is not checking his phone, like logging into somebody's domain controller, doing remote support while he's on the cliff. It's just not happening. He is out there exercising his mind and his body in a way that's totally, totally different than IT. We've had people who are guitar players and vocalists in bands. People who are bodybuilders and pro lifters. We've had people that do taxidermy in their spare time.
Wow.
If you can think of something that's not what you would expect and very different than IT, probably somebody in our team does it or has done it,
Yep.
And that was one of the first things we identified is if your passion outside of work is something different than work, you're not going to burn out as easily. Like you're going to have something else to take your mind off of it. And don't get me wrong. People love gaming for sure. There are people on our team that still love ripping apart a computer at home.
Yep.
They love gaming till 4 a.m. Like, don't get me wrong. Those people exist.
I'm that guy. Yep.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. But like, I'll give you an example. Like, we have an in-house full-time developer. He develops like our web apps and stuff like that. He runs a disc golf league locally.
Wow.
So, that's his outside passion. For me, it's real estate and building other businesses. Everybody has something on the team. So that was one thing that, if I could share with anybody else who's listening to this and you're dealing with burnout, that was like huge for us, figuring that out. And then that actually helps push you into a cool opportunity for culture, which is now, not only do people have things to bring into work that are not work related, but when you want to plan company events, guess what? Hey, it's such and such's turn. Show us your passion. And now the whole team gets to experience that team member's passion outside of work. It's not work related at all, but man, is it fun, And then you guys can all just have fun together. So like we have somebody on the team that just started skydiving, and he might actually go and get his skydiving certificate so that he can take other people on jumps. And if he does that, we will probably do a company event and take the team skydiving. Yeah. So just those things,
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome, Andrew. I mean, I know so many MSPs. We talk about the personality assessments, the DISC assessments, things like that, and several of our business transformation programs. And I know so many MSPs that love to use those to sort of say, is this person going to fit? Is that person going to fit? But man, what a neat way to think of it, like differently, and a culture fit, a culture assessment. So that's really, really great. I really appreciate that. Awesome.
Yeah. And there's other simple things too, right? Like, would I take this person to dinner with my family? That's like, you don't need a DISC assessment to figure that out.
Nope.
You spend the half an hour to an hour in the interview room and are you going to invite that person over to dinner in your house, in your home with your family? Or are you like, I hope I don't run into this person when I go grocery shopping. Like that's an easy one,
That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So why don't we talk about Enable for a minute? So do you remember when you sort of discovered Enable and how you did?
The how? So when I discovered Enable, it was back when the product we're using today was actually a company called Max Focus.
Okay.
So I think it was before they were even acquired by SolarWinds, if I recall. Then SolarWinds acquired them. Then somewhere along the line, Enable and SolarWinds split out. But I think the initial connection was by another MSP who recommended the software. Said, "Hey, this is what I'm using. Check it out." So 7 years ago, I think, 6 years ago, I think 2016, I think, is when we started using what is now today Enable Insight.
That's great. And then since then, you've continued to be an Enable partner, and you found out in the last year or so about the business transformation programs, the programs that Robert and I lead. What made you want to attend your first one? What got you inspired to sort of travel? I think to Austin is where you traveled to.
Yeah.
And then what was your takeaway from that program?
Yeah, absolutely. So I, what inspired it, I think, it was the right time for us and an exciting time for us to continue growing the business. When you figure out enough parts of your business, you start to realize that you don't have it figured out. And also you start to learn what you're missing, right? So a lot of times this is like another staff training thing, right? I draw a circle on the board, on the whiteboard, and then I draw a little sliver in here to make a pie graph. And then I just draw like a slightly larger sliver in that pie graph. And I say, okay, so where we're going to start is the smallest sliver here. This is what you know. The slightly larger sliver is the things that you know that you don't know. And then the whole rest of the pie, which makes up like 97% of this pie, is the things you don't know that you don't know. And so I think we're just at that point where as a business, we were learning more of the things we didn't know and learning more of the things. And there was a hunger for some of the new stuff that's going on too, right? Like you guys doing the business of security. Well, we were doing a deep dive into cyber like at that exact time. So we were hungry for it. We knew how important it was. We're watching everything happening in the cyber insurance world, along with, knock on wood, we've had really good security for our customers. Right. We want to keep and maintain that reputation. And what better way to do that than partner with partners that we already had, like Enable, to learn from you guys. And then to take it a step further, you show up at an event like that, and we're not just learning from you guys. You guys brought in like an incredible amount of speakers and other third-party people. And then we got to meet and talk with our peers too, which peer groups are incredible. And that whole situation is like really good. It's like you have subject matter experts really sharing with you the information you want. And then you can turn to somebody in your field who's actively doing it and say, how's this work for you? And some people shrug their shoulders and be like, I don't know, I'm not there yet either. But then there might be somebody else at the table that's like, we've been doing this for a few years. Let me walk you through how it works for our business. And we all know, right? We all know that somebody will provide a product and some advertising and a shiny, beautiful demo. And you're like, that's amazing. I want that. And then you talk with your peers and they go, well, let me tell you the real story, what's going on. And that's incredibly valuable because that doesn't mean that whatever product's being talked about isn't like good. What it means is you might need to take a different approach to understanding it. There may be some steps learned along the way. And like I said, I started my business when I was young, right? I had to trip and stumble and fall and like bloody my nose like every couple of weeks learning. So when you're in a peer group, some people have already done that. You can learn from them. And that's just incredibly valuable.
That's awesome. I loved having you guys, you and Gabe, both there in Austin. And it was even better having you there stuck at the hotel when the storms came through and we couldn't get out of Austin and had to order a bunch of Chinese and beers. Yeah, that was good times.
I've got an incredible video to share with you guys from that rainstorm. I'll send that to you.
Yeah, it was like when it rains in Austin, it rains. It's crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was
Awesome.
wild.
Awesome. So why don't you talk a little bit about what the future holds for SimpleTech? What's next?
Yeah, absolutely. So as probably everybody is saying, right, we're really diving into cyber. So we are doing a lot more cybersecurity than we've ever done for customers, looking at different tools, different services. We actually, and this is another thing that's really important. We'll plug the Enable events just a little bit more, right? By going to those events, there are things that Enable had that we didn't know Enable had. And we didn't even realize that we should maybe be in a different solution that Enable has, just based on like automation we were doing, like some things that we want code to do more heavy lifting for our team. Well, Enable has some better products for that. So for us, one of the big things is we're actually buying more Enable products, which is great advertising for you guys. But I mean, that's just the reality. Is we identified through some of that stuff that over the next 6 months, like we're going to make some big moves with Enable, but then with other service providers too. We're just like looking at changes to things like EDR, like adding in SOCs. We were really surprised. We service a lot of small customers. Every single one of them has said yes to a 24/7 SOC so far that we've talked to, has said yes to it. And you would never think that from some of these industries that you're talking to. Like some of them are obvious, right? Like healthcare, yeah, that makes sense. Like insurance, property casualty, that makes sense. But other, kind of like service-based industries that everybody, I would say the service-based industries that you would think aren't paying attention are now paying attention. So for us, it's making sure that those customers have what they want. They're understanding how important it is to protect their data. We're making sure that we're doing that. So for sure, expansion there on the cyber stuff has been huge for us. Even in the last 6 months, I mean, it's been tremendously huge. More events, more peer events for sure. So you guys keep throwing events. We're going to still keep coming. And not just with Enable, obviously, we want to see other peer groups and go to other things. That's incredibly valuable for your team. And it's another great way for employees to feel valued, respected. Like, there's a few events coming up that, I'm probably going to send somebody else and they're going to have a great time. They're going to have a great learning experience. They're going to bring something back to the team. It'll be their turn to shine and say, hey, this is what I learned at this event. And this is how XYZ company thinks we should change things. And we're just going to continue to grow, learn from the people around us, and continue to see how the industry changes, because it's changed a lot. I mean, we haven't dropped artificial intelligence in this conversation at all yet.
No.
But that's, I mean, I can't go to an event without that being a huge topic of discussion. Sure. And it's bringing a lot of changes for us.
Sure is. All right. So you've been doing this for a long time, Andrew. I think you said you were a teenager. You had $34 in your pocket or something when you started when you started this company, however many years ago. When was the point when you knew, now that's it? I've made it. I've done it. I've done what I like. I'm doing the right thing. Now that's it.
When I was able to take vacation and not have to worry about anything. And I think that's one of the biggest things, especially small MSPs, even large ones. Can you unplug when you go on vacation? And I would say the next step to that, so that's the first one, right? Like you as the owner, you can unplug when you go on vacation. There's almost like a next level to that. And this goes back to that culture, caring for the employees. Can anybody else on your team do the same thing? Because if you as the owner can unplug and go on vacation, that's great. And that's like, yeah, you've made it as a business owner, right? But as a leader, can your team do the same thing? Because I know that there was a point where I could take vacation, but Gabe couldn't. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. It's like, or if any one of us was gone, that would be problematic. And you got like last year, Gabe took 3.5, almost 4 weeks off to do a through hike. And, he's obviously taken many vacations between now and then, but to be able to say that, a lead engineer on your team was able to leave for almost a month with literally no cell service, like not even like AirDrop service or anything. Like their only touch to civilization is like little villages in between. And things are running fine and normal and smooth. Like that's it. That's IT.
That's awesome. That's so great, Andrew. All right, I got one more for you. So when I was doing my research on you and your company, I noticed in your I guess your background that you actually had some time running for public office. What?
Oh, I did.
What made you want to do
absolutely.
that? What was that all about?
So, it's interesting because as I think when you enjoy making change, especially positive change, that just expands into other areas of life. And I think as small business owners, some of us are kind of like put off by inefficiency. And, I won't get too political, but government's not overly efficient, and small business owners feel the pain of government regulation, especially tax changes, the most. And quite honestly, government's just typically very behind in technology. So I was really motivated by wanting my community to be better, wanting my state to be better. Was planning for a family and trying to think, like, especially in New York, this is the conversation that happens often. Oh, we're going to have kids, so let's figure out what state we're going to move to. Well, I have a business here, and I have friends and family that I love. I didn't want to feel like that was the answer. So I was inspired to do some politics for a few years. It was an incredible time. I got to meet so many amazing people, got to hear so many stories, learned so many more terrible things about politics and government and everything else. Like, so it was absolutely positive and incredible. But man, there's some bad stuff going on out there too. Let me tell you.
Well, that's great. Andrew, thank you so much for your time and for talking with us today. You have quite the story of how you built your service provider, and obviously your backstory is so great, so entertaining, enjoyable. And I wish you and the rest of the the SimpleTech team the absolute best of luck in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And always love connecting with you, and can't wait to see you at the next event.
Oh, it's coming up.